I think this is like the fourth episode I've started the conversation with. I'm never going to get tired of that intro music. And you can tell that I have an amazing guest in the studio, and we're out here rocking out, and he's making the sound effects. It's so cool. Picking out the song to the podcast, they sent me with this, warehouse of all these sounds, and I'm just digging, and there was nothing that hit me. And then all of a sudden I played this, and I'm like, oh my God, this is it. And then the title of the song is We Won't Back Down. And I'm thinking about all the entrepreneurs out there that have to go through just life in general, building a business, just life in general, how you can't back down in order to be successful. You've got to have a certain amount of grit and perseverance, right? And so just super fitting, and it always gets me pumped up every time. So difference makers. As I've alluded to, we have a phenomenal guest, and if you've listened to Coffee and Grit, you're familiar with this gentleman because he was the #1 most listened to episode in Coffee and Grit history during Illuminations of the Traveling Bodhi.
Journey to Illumination with Traveling Bodhi.
Yes, yeah. And I compared him to like listening to Chris Farley and Yoda in mixed in one. You get the voices, you get the sense of humor.
There is that. There is, yeah.
And you get the wisdom as well. In our last conversation we had, we unfolded. It was like a choose your own adventure. We went through relationships, we went through life lessons, we went through career, and at the time you were planning an adventure to go on in leaving the state and going to build houses. And I don't think we talked about it in the episode, but shortly thereafter you did that. And so when Brian reached out to me about a month or so ago and was like, I'm coming back to Michigan. He's been in Tennessee for 8 months, and we talk about the journey of illumination with the Traveling Bodhi. Now we're back to hear the illuminations that the Bodhi learned through his travels, because there are many, and there are some of them that I'm not even caught up on that he came to today. It is super pumped up. So I'm pumped up to get into this conversation. Brian, man, what is up?
Previously on The Life of Brian. So, no, actually, at the last podcast, the Tennessee was not even on the docket.
Okay. I couldn't remember.
So I was still in the middle. For those playing the home game, if you go to Traveling Bodhi on YouTube, BODHI, you will see all of the 27 videos of the bus build video that I did. And then I was on the tail of this, invited by a longtime dear friend to come to Tennessee to help her build tiny houses. And they were 2 14 by 40 foot sheds, basically the Graceland sheds that we converted into our full-time home. One is a studio with just a half bath and it's open office space. And the other one was full kitchen, full bathroom, laundry, hot water heater, the whole 9 yards. And I'd never done anything like that before. Got down to Tennessee and we wanted to build ourselves a house, and I'd never done that before. And so I had to learn a lot, and I did a lot of praying. I tell you what, there's things that my bus build was the first time that I ever done anything myself.
Yeah. That was the first time you'd ever built out anything by yourself?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. Through the grace of God. And I'll say that. And there's more to that story than there is, but long story short, the bus was the first. I mean, I'd been in construction off and on for many years in my life, so I had like the knowledge, the skill, the whatever. But the bus is the first endeavor of my own. And then through the experience of that, my friend saw my journey, and she's like, I'm like, it's like the ultimate referral, right? It's like, I see your work. You're not selling me, but I want you to come.
Yes. Right.
So I went down to Tennessee, and we had this experience, and oh, Lord, I don't think either one of us knew the journey that we were going to get on, but, oh, God, it was one of the most intense 8 months that either one of us had either been on. I mean, building a house is one of the top stressors in the world, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is it? So my friend, she had met a man. They got married after knowing each other like 6-8 months, and then that relationship lasted a few months, and then they got divorced, separated, because it was a very unhealthy relationship. But regardless, while she was in Phoenix area, one of her 2 cats died. So she went through a separation, a cat divorce, and multiple movings, and then building a house all like within a short period of time. So she's just like really like in transformation, to say the least, right?
Yeah.
So I show up in this basically 10 acres of dense woods, except for a tiny driveway that they had put into it. And I showed up and helped her. I was halfway project management, laborer, designer, all of this, because she had her vision, but she also was collaborating, co-creating it with me, right? And so little did we know the journey, the most intense thing that we really went through was communication, learning how to communicate.
Yeah.
And she's 72 and acts like she's 45. She's got the wisdom. If you think I'm Yoda, she's like, what's the master, right? The guy above, right? Anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know Star Wars. I'm sorry. Forgive me. So she's like a master wisdom to the point where she's been a master astrologer for as long as I've been alive, 40 plus years. And I loved how she would come up to me and she goes, look, I see you doing this pattern. And this is a typical pattern between men and women, how they communicate, this dynamic of power and control and this, and this. And I'm like, thank you for even just being able to see this and converse this with me. But before I went down there, she made me a man. Done. I tell you what, she pushed my edges so many times. And historically, I've had a hard time with boundaries. I don't want to be the jerk. I don't want to be the asshole. Like, hey, I'm sorry, cursing, kids. I don't want to be the jerk. I don't want to be the whatever, like boundaries.
Yeah.
So for me, I had to healthily learn how to say no. Multiple times in this occurrence, in this project, I'd be in the middle of something like head focused and she'd like, hey, Brian, I need your help. I'm like, and my old reaction would be to get upset and reactionary and knee jerk. And I would just say, look, no, like, let me finish this. And then, yes, I will come to you and find out what you need. But right now I need to do this. And she's like, okay. Right. And so through multiple occurrences of that, it got easier and easier to say no. My entire life saying no has never been easy. And I know a lot of people struggle with this, right? Yeah. And so I got a lot of practice of saying no. And there was, basically for all intents and purposes, we weren't romantic, but we had a really intense relationship for 8 months. We were by and large, the only people we saw was each other.
Out in these dense woods in Tennessee.
In the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like literally, just to give you some context, it was a half hour in either direction, north or south, to get to any semblance of a town, right? Like a half hour south got us to something that was kind of like Brighton. But not really.
We had conversations, and you'd have to drive your boss into another area in order to get signal, or you did a speaking event.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I had to. Chris Farley.
Yeah.
So I go live in a van down by the river. Tennessee River was a mile from us, and so the only way I can get a signal to do that, whatever that talking event was that we did together, I literally had to drive my bus down to the river. So I was living in my van down by the river to do this thing. And so it was hilarious. But yeah, so the signal, there was no 5G, which is great. But at the same time, my phone would be sitting on my counter in my bus. And randomly, it would just say no signal. I'm like, I didn't even move. Like it just would go in and out. But either way, communication and what was interesting was communication. And for those who know what shadow projections and mirrors are, meaning like what's inside, Bugs Bunny folks. What's outside is within me, right? What I see in the outside world is just a mirror of myself.
Yep.
So
if somebody, to clarify deeper into that, if somebody responds a certain way, their response is not meant towards you, right? It's just a response.
Or it's the person. So in Mankind Project, when I was then, I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at the person behind you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. But if you think that people judge you a certain way or see you a certain way and they respond that, you take that to being like they're personally attacking you or they're acting a certain way towards you. Right.
And so I can think of one particular time, and this was in the last it was the last quarter or so of the project, where regularly she'd ask my opinion and I'd give her my opinion and she's like, well, I'm gonna go do something else. It's just like, then why did you even ask me? Right. And so I got upset with her one time and she looked at me. I said, now don't tell me that you would not give me the same response. And she kind of did this and she goes, I wish you weren't so much like me. Because she would have said the exact same thing. Right. And so that was what I loved, that she could just own her stuff. She's done a lot of similar training that I have. And so we had similar tools and resources. And so I love the fact that no matter how thick we got into it, and in fact, there was one time she admitted, she goes, I came this close to asking you to leave right? But she goes, I sat with it. And one time she like came up to my bus and I'm an empath. I'm an intuitive. I can feel this. I was already feeling angry. She was feeling angry. And she just walked up and we just held each other and we started crying.
Wow.
And it was just like, in that moment, I'm like, okay, we're going to get through this.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're going to get through this because we both love each other. And the amount of love that I have for that woman, her name is Laurel. It's like, basically, in short, we adopted each other as surrogate parent and child before this project happened. And so we played it out. And what was sort of fascinating is I got to play out, not in a way, I got to play out all the stuff I wanted to with my birth mother with her, but in a different way.
Wow.
And so and then she's never had children. So she got to play that role for me, or I get to play that role for her. And so it's just amazing to see all these different layers and strata of just stuff that happened. And so like, I'm literally not the same human like that I was 8 months ago because of all this stuff on top of being in Tennessee and getting to experience that whole thing. Right.
I feel like there's a book in this.
My life is a book. I mean, so I want to share a story. I love story time. So you told me you were going to get here at 10 to the hour.
Yeah.
And so I had a return or exchange to go do at a store down, off the highway. And I figured I got plenty of time to get here. I go get the product and I'm standing, as soon as I get to the queue for the register, there's like 5-6 people deep. I'm like, it's 25 to the hour. I'm like, you're kidding me. So I get all the way up and it's just a simple exchange, one item for one item. Of course, I don't have the receipt. And so like, okay, we just need your phone number. So the computer starts glitching and like is asking for my first child's left leg and all these other things. And the woman's like, I just want to like do this exchange, right? And so she even called over a manager, and the manager couldn't figure out. And we're like, we don't know what's going on. I'm like watching the clock ticking. I'm like, so in this moment, a little bit of a backstory. Whenever I'm running late, the universe loves to just test me. And typically I get really upset. Yep. And in that moment, like we were talking about, I had a choice. Do I get angry or do I just laugh about this? Yeah. And I know when I go this way, things go a lot better. So with the cashier, I started just sort of making some jokes. And of course they wanted my name and my address. I'm like, we're giving you fake. I'm not giving you, and I told her I'm giving you fake information to the point where she's like, well, your first name could be Arthur. And she's like, and she was getting into it, right? I'm like, yeah.
That's always the best when you get the employees in on the, right. On the joke.
And then she's like, what about your email address? I said, yes@no.com. And she goes, are you serious? I said, it works. She goes, I have to remember that. But anyway.
yes@no.com.
It works. It works. I feel bad for whoever has that email address. Anyway, so the product I was buying was cheaper than the one I was buying. So the one I was returning was cheaper. And she goes, I hate to say it, but it's just going to be whatever number the thing kicks out. And it kicked out, I think I bought it was like $2, but it kicked it out like $1.58. Uh-huh. And the thing I was going to buy was supposed to be $2.99 or whatever, right? And she goes, I feel so bad. She goes, I'm just going to give you a discount for the troubles. And when the till opened up, it gave cash instead of a gift card. So that was kind of cool. I said, just put that money on the counter.
Yeah.
And we'll sort it out from there. And she goes, wouldn't it be, and I said, wouldn't it be funny if it came to $1.58? She goes, that would be pretty fun. She goes, my God, you're not going to believe this. I'm like, I literally like did like a jump and like a high five in midair. The thing I exchanged, she goes, here's your thing, get out of here. Because I'm like, I'm running late. I told her I have a meeting at the top of the hour. And just the fact that we got to share this enlivening, wonderful experience with stranger.
Yeah.
That we'll never see again, more than likely. Yep. But the fact that I lit up her day.
Yes.
Without even trying. And like, I mean, that could have gone either way. I could have been the jerk, or I'm like, you know what? Let's just have fun with this.
It all comes down to your point, to that choice, because you have a choice, and then you sit and you're able to slow it down, realize that you have a choice. Because so many times we're reactive. I'm running late, and everybody in my path is going to feel that anger and that wrath, right?
And it's your fault.
But what does that get you? Most likely you're going to be even later because that person, you've offended them, hurt their feelings, whatever. They're not going to go to the grasp of the world to make something happen for you. They're not going to have fun with this.
Do you know what's even funnier? I got here before you.
You got here before me. Exactly.
So it didn't even matter anyway. It didn't even matter anyway. And that's the best part was once I got here, I'm like, oh, that's too funny. Because the way it happens in my life, and I've had multiple people experience this, when I'm running late to somewhere and someone's a passenger, and it happens when I'm alone, it's the one slow car in the entire state is in front of me. Yeah. And for years, I used to get screaming mad, like punch the steering wheel, like every obscenity in the book. And it still happens, but if now I go like, haha, I get it. I get the joke. This is funny, move it along, but I'm still angry. And until I clear that level, it won't. And when it does, it's almost magic. Like the last time it happened was in Tennessee, same thing. And once I finally cleared it, the truck randomly pulled off on the side of the road.
Yeah.
Not even into a driveway.
Yep.
Just.
Yep. I had this I walked into this several years ago. I walked into this Panera Bread, and I was watching this guy. There was a line, and I was watching this guy deal with the customers, and you could tell he was just at this level of frustration. He was not having a good day. He was kind of rude to everybody. He was like projecting what he was feeling on the inside, right? And I had made it my mission to make this guy's day better. I'm like, by the time I get up there, I'm going to crack a joke. I'm going to like ease this guy, like make his day better. Right. So I get up there and we're talking back and forth. I'm like my energetic, bubbly self. And he yawned, and I was like, oh man, like you yawn, like, don't they feed you like coffee around here? Or, like just joking. Everybody else in the store laughed except for him, which I think probably made it worse. So like, it was very apparent I'm not making this guy's day better. So then to top it off, I order a large coffee because it's early morning and I need to get through my day. And he comes back and he hands me the sample size coffee. And I'm like, oh, this guy's going to hate me. I'm like, I ordered a large. And he's like, and so he goes and he starts typing on the computer and he's like hitting things. You could see he's like kind of sweating it out and doesn't know what he's maybe doing on the buttons. And so he's getting super frustrated. I'm like, I am not going to win this, man. All I want to do is make this guy's day better, right? So he's like, I got to go talk to my manager. And so he's storms off into the back room, and he comes back and he's like, my manager just said just to go ahead and give you the large coffee and not charge you for it because, it isn't worth it. And I was like, man, I see what you did there and I really appreciate it. He was like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I know, things are kind of not going right. And I'm like, you didn't have to go up and fight for me or battle for me, but you went to your manager and you was able to get me the coffee without any kind of troubles. And I really appreciate the effort that you put into that. And he was like, oh man, thanks. I appreciate it. And then I gave him a $5 tip. And the guy's face like lit up and he was like, thank you so much. Have a great day. And I heard him as I'm walking out the door, greeting the next person, be like, hey, welcome to Panera. How are you doing today? And it like completely changed it, right? So you have the ability to impact and change somebody's day. Now I went in there regularly and I never saw that guy having a bad day again. Now, I'm not saying that he didn't have a bad day. I'm not saying what I did changed his life, but every time I saw that guy, he was happy to see me. He always had a smile on his face. Like, we can all have bad days and that happens, but how powerful is that to make that impact?
It is. And when you've shared this with me before, one I didn't notice before is you went in with the agenda to change his idea.
Because I saw he was having a horrible day.
Right,
yeah.
but you failed in that because you were looking for an in.
Oh, yep.
Here's my coaching for you.
Yeah.
You were looking for the in. You were trying to force your way in. This is force versus flow.
So true.
You were looking to force your way in, and you gave up, and then you saw something else happen, and you end up still impacting that man's life, but because it came from here, not from
trying to force it in your head. That's so
I'm going to make you happy.
Yeah.
Oh, are you? Oh,
great coaching moment. That's awesome.
Put it on my tab. So I have the next thing I want to go into.
Okay.
So currently on the Life of Brian I've been returned to the state of Michigan now for about a month, within a day or so, and not really sure what I wanted to do to go forward. Because historically I've been a bodywork practitioner for over 10 years. And then sort of God guided me into this construction path. So I was like, well, maybe God wants me to be a carpenter, right?
Yeah.
And so
if it's good for Jesus,
if I had a hammer and a hammer in the morning, I'd have it. Anyway, so I kid you not. So I'm living in my bus. By the way, quick sell. Bodhi the bus is for sale, everyone. Bodhi the bus for sale. If you're interested, look it up. It's on my YouTube channel.
This is a phenomenal bus. You watch the YouTube channel.
It's not even a bus. So my friend Joy, who I'm staying on her property with her parents, this beautiful property in Howell, She's like, Brian, it's not a bus. It's a tiny home. It's a custom tiny home that's gorgeous and magnificent that happens to be in a bus. When you tell
It happens to have wheels and drives.
it just happens to. When you tell people you're selling a bus, they go, you want how much for it? But she's like, if you tell people you're selling a custom built tiny home,
Yes.
it's worth that price point.
Yes.
So I'm like, oh, words, marketing.
101. Yeah.
So anyway, it's for sale if you're interested. Hopefully it'll go quickly. Anyway, didn't know what I wanted to do in the first week. So we're all, oh, by the way, Steve Ziskowski, calling Steve Ziskowski. I'm supposed to give you a shout out, brother. I love you.
Listener. He is
Thank you for being
right
a connector.
now.
That's why I know this man and most people in Brighton.
Absolutely.
Steve Ziskowski for Sarasnet. If you need a local networking, Brighton, Howell, Canton, Ann Arbor, if you're an entrepreneur.
It was a little over a year ago. He was like, he connected us in an email. And I remember we sat down and had our first conversation. You're like, I'm not really sure why I'm here or why he connected us, but let's go. And then look at where it's gone in a year.
Right.
And that's with you being gone for 8 months. So
yeah, absolutely. So anyway, he's a great man. If you need a networking or organization, it's a facilitated group.
Yeah.
And that's the best part about it. It's a facilitated group. And you show up, you network, you go home. Steve does all the heavy lifting for you. And he's an amazing connector. So
that's a huge piece. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've been in and out of the group for a long time now. So anyway, there it is, Steve. I love you. Thank you. Anyway, so with that, Joy, my dear friend who you know, she's like, hey, do you just want to come check out the group I'm in just to give you something? And she goes, well, maybe you don't because you don't even know what you want to do yet. I'm like, I don't. But I checked out the roster and there was this construction company. By the way, Renovations Unlimited, it's a great company. I worked for them for a week. Everyone's awesome. They do fantastic work.
Awesome.
I'm plugging Ed.
Yeah.
I'm plugging Ed too because Ed's an awesome guy. He really is. Long story short, I was with him for a week plus 2 training days. And every inch of me was like, this is not right.
Yeah.
But what was great was he heard me and he's like, I get it. And so we had a very peaceable, amendable, he's like, I get it, man. I wish you luck. Where do we go to next? Right.
Yeah.
So what that brings me to is the current thing, which I think we briefly talked about. Maybe not. Maybe this is breaking news.
I think we briefly talked about this. Yep.
Is in the same hang on. I got to share this. So Joy. So I saw this. I saw Renovations Unlimited with Ed in the roster, and something said call him. I'm like, okay. So I said, Joy, can you connect us? She said, sure. The next day, he drives from his office in Whitmore Lake to Howell to have coffee with me. And through the course of an hour-long conversation, was not an interview. It was just like a get to know you. He's like, I want to offer you a job.
Wow.
I'm like, cool, because I kind of wanted to work. And it was just like this beautiful hand-in-glove experience, right? And so I sort of saw it as this divine thing that I had to do. It was beautiful and divine. And so here's the coaching coming out for you is... We talked about this briefly, I think, in the last podcast, but our attachment to timeline creates suffering. If we're attached to the timeline of anything, health, relationships, career, the food in our belly, our nap length, whatever, if we're expecting it to go a certain length and it doesn't meet that criterion, suffering happens.
Yes, yep.
So little did I know this, I'd only be in this job for a week, right? And ironically, it was about 3 hours ago he let me go, right? Because I told him, I'm like, look, this isn't working out because I totally get it. And I said, but I want to be fair with you. Like, I don't know when's a good time to depart. And so he goes, we can talk on Monday. I showed up today, he goes, this will be your last day. I said, great. Yeah. And he was very awesome about it. That job, what I'm getting to, and this is the point in it, so I've been a body worker for the last 10 plus years. And I was getting disillusioned with it, because of a lot of reasons that I don't want to go into right now. And I was uncertain I wanted to get in the field. I had a few experiences and a few conversations in the last week that reminded me that's my gift. That's my gold. Mm-hmm. And ironically, going back and looking at my website that I haven't looked at in over 2 years reminded me of some of the whys that I need to be in this field. And secondly, there was one person who I was talking with, and she goes, I can sense your gift, Brian, and you're needed in this field. Like, don't throw away your gift. And that was like one of the biggest things for me was, even before I had my spiritual awakening and I went into chakras and crystals and things, like I used to be like in my 20s, I was standing on the streets in California when I lived there. Uh-huh. Random people would walk up to me, or even anytime in my 20s, random people would come up to me and dump. have a monologue dump, and you empaths and intuitives, you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
It's weird, but
it's weird. And I was always like, what is it about me?
Right.
What is it about me?
I never,
some
but the
random
thing was,
stranger?
is like, even before I knew what they were doing, didn't understand it, but I didn't care. It didn't feel weird to me.
Yeah.
So for me, I was reminded of that in this last week. I'm like, that's my gift, right? I've been looking for my gift under this hat, under this micro, everywhere. Can't find it.
It's right in front of your face.
And ironically enough, this lovely state of Michigan is the same thing. I just turned version 4.0, for those doing the math. And for the last 20 years, I've been trying to get out of the state of Michigan. I've lived in 7 states, six, not including Michigan, was 7. Trying to find home everywhere. Can't find it. And in the last few months, it's like I had this paradoxical thought sitting in my bus in Tennessee, which is, every other place that I go reminds me of why I need to be in Michigan. For those who love paradoxes. Like, okay, that's a weird one, but it's true, right? And I've confirmed that with a few other people I've talked with recently. It's like, yeah, I get that. And so it sounds strange, but my plan is to sell this bus and actually buy property here in Livingston County somewhere and just set down roots and just say, okay, I'm done. That's my plan. That's my goal. So help me actualize that goal, everyone. Bodhi the bus. Call me on. Well, I won't give you my number, but you get it. Anyway.
Your number will be, so we'll have it in the show credits. So, or what if you want it to be.
There are some people who are completely, when I did a podcast during 2020, I had 2 or 3 guys like, my number is 46729. I'm like, okay, like I'm just going to give it out to the world. I'm like, cool, I may not, but.
No, you don't have to.
But either way, regardless, it's a real thing, right? So fast forward, I'm not done with this story. So that ends. Heather Heffley, a lovely spirit. I met her a year ago at the Sarasnet breakfast. Only met her one day last year. Randomly shows up. By the way, our dear friend Joy Detling has this awesome conscious dance thing in Brighton at Michelle's Academy of Dance every Sunday from 10:30 to like 11:30 or noon. And I'm plugging it because conscious dance, ecstatic dance, whatever you want to call it, it's freeform dance. You show up. You move your body however you want. And in fact, I've been doing this practice for over 10 years. What did I do yesterday? I set my intention and I'm going to move. I literally laid and I slept the entire hour and 15 minutes. And it was what I needed.
Yeah.
But what other people said in the sharing circle that happens in the before and the after was, thank you for doing that because it gave me the permission to do what I needed to do. And everyone sort of had that response with, I saw you being goofy, so it gave me permission to do this. And that's what's beautiful about this dance circle is you just show up. There's no like, I have to be this, I have to be that. It's just like, and in fact, one other week someone was there it's the only time I've ever been in a space where I feel like I can be alone and be myself in the presence of others.
That's amazing.
That's rare.
Yeah, that's very rare.
And so if you're looking for something like that, it's called Livingston County Conscious Dance, I think is the Facebook page. Anyway, check it out. So at that, Heather was there. By the way, I take a long time to tell stories, and my dad hates it. So Heather was there, and they do like a lunch afterwards. Like some people want. So we went out to lunch. I'm like, Heather, we need to talk. Long story short, she happens to be working at a clinic that's down the road that after this podcast is over, I'm going to go and meet the owner of and more than likely set up time to be working at it.
That's amazing.
And so the fact that like it took no time once I made my mind up for it to flip. And in fact, today at 10 o'clock, I stopped working with that at noon. At 10 o'clock, I got a text from some random person, and thank you for calling me. Hey, I am a client of yours from many years ago. Are you still in practice and when are your availability?
Wow. Yeah.
This is how, right?
Yeah.
I can't make this stuff up.
Yep.
And so it's like, okay. And then, so there's this wonderful thing that I do called Craniosacral Therapy. I studied with Upledger Institute many years ago. I did the track with Craniosacral and Somato-Emotional Release. For those who know what I'm talking about, great. For those who don't, I'll go into it later. Regardless, apparently there aren't many other practitioners in this town that do that. So maybe I found my niche. So what craniosacral therapy is, and in short, it's a light touch therapy that works with the body it's kind of like energy work. Are you familiar with it, Jason?
No.
So it's a light touch therapy actually invented by John Upledger, who was a Detroiter. And he did a lot of his research at MSU. He was a full doctor and was having experiences And he was he a professor? He was someone involved with the osteopathic school at Michigan State. And he's just like, guys, I'm having this really weird experience. And if you don't want to think I'm kooky, prove me I'm wrong. So he went to all the science medical people who wanted to call him nuts. He's like, great, prove to me that I'm wrong. And they couldn't. They proved he was right. And there's this really subtle art. Basically, the body has these really subtle pulses, the brainstem through the spine. There's a pulse that has the cerebrospinal fluid and the spinal cord has a pulse, like the heart, like everything else. And he saw this, but it's very subtle and nuanced. And what he noticed was is depending on that pulse, he can sort of tell the health and well-being of the body depending on how it's flowing. The body moves in concurrence to that.
Makes sense, yeah.
And so if someone's having an issue, basically, long story, real short, is the practitioner kind of tunes in and works with the body in a subtle, almost like energy work, but it's actually a hands-on manipulative sort of experience. And the person can have any experience ranging from falling asleep and having a nice nap, going into a deep meditation and having like visualizations, or going, are you going to do anything? I don't feel you doing anything at all, right? So, but what I do is I sort of pair that. And so I've been, like I said, a body worker for 10 plus years. I went to the Ann Arbor Institute of Massage Therapy back in 2011, 10 or 11. And so myofascial therapy, neuromuscular therapy, sports massage, in short, trauma. I do therapeutic work. I don't do spa massage. I don't do anything fluffy, buffy. I don't even use lotion or oil. And in fact, I don't even ask my clients to disrobe most of the times. I offer that to them. And what I've realized is most people really love that. The people who love it, why, is because people who feel, regardless of man or woman, don't feel comfortable disrobing in front of a stranger, A. B, the other main thing that I've heard about the no oil thing that people really love is I can come in midday on a lunch break and not have to go home and take a shower before going back to the office. Or I can come to you on Friday before going out for a date and not have to go home and clean up. Right. And so that's been the beautiful. So it's sports massagey in that sense. But the energy, so I'm pairing a lot of different modalities, but the energy work, the craniosacral and the energy work, it's like I tell people, this is a co-creative experience. It's a co-creative experience, meaning I need you to participate in this. And actually I was talking with Ed about this on the way back, and he said it's something like athletes, you need to use your breath to move the energy to do your stuff. Right?
Yep.
And I'm not an athlete, but you exhale and whatever, right? You're using your breath as runners, monitor their breath.
We think about yoga. Yoga's
absolutely.
If you're talking to anybody that does yoga, it's not about the exercise, it's about the breath within the exercise, right? Absolutely.
So for me, the way that I sort of tell people is that when I'm having my hands on you, it's almost like a focus point of meditation. Like when it doesn't matter how heavy or light I'm pressing you, it's like bring your awareness here. Mm-hmm. And when the energy goes where the mind flows, right? Or whatever that saying that we've all heard before. But when I'm putting it, I'm like, bring your attention here. Is it uncomfortable? Okay. Like breathe into that and then breathe it out. And as I tell men get this, you're exhausting it. Women want to put it in their bellies. A lot of women want to breathe whatever their pain is into their bellies. And I've said this to women, were you breathing into my gut? No, you're not, sweetheart. You're breathing it out. And so when they do that, it's the first time I felt it, I'm like, you just took your thumb off me, didn't they? Go, no. In fact, my best friend got me into the field 12 years ago. And she goes, Brian, I'm like twice as deep as I was when I first started with you. Meaning like depth and pressure. Right?
Yeah.
And so to me, it feels like, or whoever the client on the table is, it feels like the pressure's coming off. But because you're using your breath to release that tension,
you're gone. Actually deeper though.
Right, absolutely. And it's interesting. There's this, I want heavy pressure. You can go as hard as you want, right? I remember I had this one client years ago. She's this 4 foot nothing Iranian woman. She's like, you can't hurt me. I'm like, I'm not trying to hurt you, right? And she had like this ego around it. But the thing is I can tell people, look, I can be coming through you on the other side of your body. And if it's not a pressure point, you're not going to feel it. However, I can have a feather's weight on a sensitive trigger point and you'll be screaming off the table. So it's about that awareness, right? And so most people think, well, for example, something I learned in school is to give people a comparative. Let me see your hand for a second. Mm-hmm. So if I'm working here and that may be tender, I said, this is all the pressure I'm doing. And they go, are you serious? I'm like, yeah. Because of having that compared, all of a sudden their mind goes, holy cow, I didn't realize I was that tight there. And so that's another layer of the, like, how can I work through this, right? And giving them the intention to breathe through it. So, yeah, so basically, in short, I'm being pulled back into this and realizing that when I was doing the construction thing, I watched my whole body shut down.
Yep.
And for those who may or may not know what I'm talking about, your body will speak to you, whether or not you're listening to it, sometimes through words, mirror work. I love doing mirror work, but I was listening to my body saying, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But the construction, and it's nothing about the company or anything, but just my body's like, no.
Yep.
As soon as I made this flip to go do body work again, I felt enlivened. I feel like I'm on 20 cups of coffee, even though I haven't had a sip today. And that's what we kind of talked about, like being on the edge, right? At the beginning of this conversation.
Yes.
All right, does it enliven you? Does it kick you out of bed in the morning?
And if not, what are you living life for? What are you
Right,
doing
but
it
what's
for?
fascinating, and this is a key point that I want to make. 2 weeks ago, I literally said out of my mouth, I will never rent a space and do body work ever again. Chew on that one for a minute. And people go, well, are you really sure you want to? Well, it's like this. I had a wall. So as a coach, and so I also do transformational coaching, spiritual life coaching, which I know is a broad statement, but a lot of times we can't, it's the ring of fire for the ladies out there, but we sometimes can't see the gold on the other side of the mountain until we do the work, right?
Yep.
And so for me, I couldn't see that gold until I had this hard, like this is not it. It's the Goldilocks, too hot, too cold, just right.
Yep.
In a sense, but I don't really know what's just right until I've had too much I keep hitting this microphone. I'm sorry. Is this thing working? Anyway, so you don't know what's right until you've had too much or too little sometimes.
Well, okay, so and go back to our last conversation. You talked about, and literally we were talking about you being the traveling Bodhi, and we talked about like your ideal situation would be you traveling around and kind of being a nomad and not being in a community. And then right before you came back, you're like, "Yep, I'm ready to settle roots into Michigan and get married and have a job and like be here." And it's so, but this is the thing. That's the same you, but you get to change your mind in one. If you wouldn't have gave up massage and did the construction thing and went to Tennessee, like you don't have this level of awakening and work that you were able to do at Laurel. Like this whole experience that was life transforming in itself within, just all the work that you were able to do human to human. You don't get that experience. So you got to go and experience that. You experience it. It's powerful. And then you get to make a transition and do whatever you want. You think the message comes through as in you need to be in construction and project management, and your body answered right away, no, it's not. Get the hell out of there.
In fact, I even saw the work of the project manager for the construction firm, and I'm like, whoa!
Tight. I can't breathe.
I thought my job was hard. My job was easy, by the way. The job that I had was super easy, and it would have been lots of fun had I been in the right mindset for it.
Yep. Had it been for you.
Had it been for me.
Because that's the key, and that's like awesome for Ed to have this awareness. But it's like if you break up with somebody in a relationship and you tell them, I do not want to be with you, I don't love you, and they're like, but you're killing me. If you leave, I'm gonna kill myself, or I'm not gonna be. They just told you they don't love you and they don't want to be with you. Like, that's it. That's it. That's the end of the conversation, because no matter how you feel, you're never going to make them feel the same way. And so no matter how much they like you or you could provide value, you could rock at that job because you could. If you're not in it, you're never going to rock at the job, and they're never going to love you full term. It was the best to call it at a week.
Yeah. Well, and actually, I was talking with my friend Joy about this last night, and a few people are like, don't you think you should give it some more time? I said, okay, if I'm in an unhappy situation, my history with romantic relationships, let's just drag. It'll get better in 6 months. Well, if we move across country, it'll get better, right? It's just like, how long do you want to drag the dead horse?
Yep.
Let it say your prayers and walk on. And in fact, I've had a number of women that I've been grateful for where we've had a romantic connection. And it's like, okay, no, we're going to be friends. And we sat down like, is this really friends? Great. We're friends now. It's like, awesome. All that pressure is off of us now. Yeah, we're going to need some integration time, but we've come back and been amazing friends afterwards. And those are some of the best relationships that I have, because those are the most intimate and vulnerable, because you've already been in that romantic corner, right? And now it's just like, oh, wow, this is way more easier to be with you. And in fact, I'll never forget this. Years ago, I was dating this woman. We've only been together for a few months. And I said, am I only with you because we have things in common? And she goes, what's wrong with that? And I'm like, wrong answer.
Yeah.
But I didn't say that in my head. I said wrong answer, right? I didn't say that to her. But we've become great friends since we separated. And so as we kind of talked, like on the last podcast, we talked a lot about relationships, right? It doesn't matter if it works or it doesn't, or it works until it doesn't. There's no shame. And again, there's no shame because that's just going to create suffering. We failed, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Get out of that cycle of shame quickly. First off, like a lot of things that we hold shame over is actually our superpower, right? Like, and again, falling back into like massage and body work and healing, that's your superpower. Like you're trying to avoid that and get away from it. And that's your thing. And it's your calling. And it's bringing you back.
Right. Yeah, that, and also what I have decided, and I already have some offerings with it, and I'll continue to offer it, is tiny living consulting, right? Because I not only built the bus and the house in Tennessee, but I've done years and years and years of research in that, and I've also helped build yurts. I used to build hoop houses and stuff like this, and so I have a lot of experience in that realm. And I actually have a few clients on board right now where I'm doing that, where it's, hey, all of the hundreds of questions people have before they get into tiny living. Why? For me, my first question to them is why.
Yeah. Why are you doing it?
In any business, why? Yep. Figure out the why. And then from there, you can figure out the how, right? Once you know your why, you can figure out your how. And so when I work with coaching with my individual clients, and again, it's transformational. I mean, it's the generic statement of, if I don't want to do this anymore, it sounds like me, right? I don't want to do this anymore. What do I want to do next? Oh, I don't know. And it's helping people through that transformation. Or sometimes, like I've found, I'm sure you've heard, people just need to be heard or validated.
Yep.
Like me, right?
Yep.
It's like, no, you got this. I do? Great. And that's all it is.
Yep.
It's just something simple. Sometimes we just need that permission slip, like I said last time, right?
There's a young sales guy I started working with back in March for a company that's my client, and he had said what's been great is just a lot of times I had the right answer, but I'd spin out and I'd not take action because I'd second guess myself. Versus now I have a sounding board. I can call you up or shoot you a message and be like, what do you think of this? And 90% of the time, what my instinct was right. And so to get that validation, that creates that confidence, and you're no longer spinning out and wasting that time.
Yeah. Like I was actually talking to someone earlier. If you have a relationship with God, and I don't mean like the whatever, but like with God, like actual God, spirit. I will say in the last year, I've had many times I'm like, I don't know how to do this. And I would pray before I go to bed. And before I woke up in the morning, I had like literally detailed answers on how to do things. In that, our intuition is the same thing. Are we listening to our intuition? Are we trusting our intuition? And I had a friend in Colorado who had this great saying, don't ghost your intuition, right? Like you just said, I'm getting the answer. Oh, that's too easy. That can't be the answer. It's like, more than likely it is. Because we live in a world where it has to be challenging. You have to crawl a 12-foot hole and blah, 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 right?
Yep.
And sometimes I've had, even with my clients, even myself, I'm like, no, that's way too easy. That can't be the answer.
We're looking for the hidden.
We're looking for the struggle. And if we just look at the last two things I just talked about, like with getting that job with Ed and then leaving and then getting the massage gig right up, like that wasn't even easy. I was like, here's your dinner, sir. Here's your dinner. Here's your steak. I'm like, thank you, right?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
And then I just want to add this, and a lot of times people pray for something. And I don't mean Christianity. I just mean you're praying, you're asking God, a higher source, help me with this. And then they get it and they go, thank you. And they go away. They don't stop to thank God. Like, you asked your dad for $5 and you just run away with it. So it's like, thank you.
Yeah.
What happened to thank you? So remember this. I'm not saying this to be shameful. I'm just saying, like, I've seen a lot of people when they ask for something, they get it. And they forgot to stop and just say thank you to God, to divine, to angels, to spirits, whatever you want to call it. Regardless, I think it's important to take that minute and just say thank you.
It's just practicing gratitude in general, right? And being grateful for what you have, and especially when you got something that you wanted and you achieved it, or you got that, like, be grateful for it.
Yeah. And I'll even say, it's interesting. I did a talk on this. I also teach personal growth and self-development workshops and gratitude. And when I lived in Denver for a year and a half, I worked at a clinic that I served quadriplegic and paraplegic patients. Did I ever tell you about this?
No.
So all my clients, I remember being there for about a week, and it was a clinic where there was massage, acupuncture, chiropractic, and personal training to help habilitate, not rehabilitate, but habilitate these individuals. And after being there for about a week, one of the personal trainers came up to me and goes, "How you doing, Brian?" And I'm like, "Good. Like, actually, I'm enjoying this." And he goes, I'm like, "I don't know how I could have a bad day being here," which I did subsequently months down the line, but that was for political reasons inside the organization. It wasn't with the clients.
Yeah.
He goes, "We have voluntary use of our bowel and bladder, and we can move whenever we want." He goes, "We're already above our clients at that level.
Yep.
Everything else is cherry."
Yep.
And in that moment, I realized that I can't complain about anything in my life.
Yep.
I can get up and move when I want. I can pee when I want. I can go drive whenever I want, wherever I want. These 90% of these people could not.
Yep.
And we're complaining about Starbucks being closed on Sunday or whatever. It's just like, check yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And so for me, like that was the baseline for me for a gratitude practice then. And I've offered this to people now. It's like, really, I mean, it sounds stupid. You have matching socks and you have underwear on. You can put it on yourself. Congratulations. That is actually something to be grateful for. Mm-hmm. We get so caught up in this third dimension of productivity, sales, numbers, whatever.
Going back to what you mentioned earlier is being married to the time, right? Like, oh, I should be successful by now. Oh, my friends have this and this by now. Or look at the people on Facebook. They have this and this and this. And I'm older than them and I'm back here still. Like when you start comparing yourself, one and two, you look at like that time and it's easy to get depressed and think like, oh, it's not fast enough.
I was there a week ago.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what's wrong with you? I should be here. Like, but what I want to say is I want to finish this. The clients that I saw were grateful for their injury. Almost all of them. Because of whatever their story was.
Yeah.
Some of them were straight up miracles. Like, I'm not going to go into the story, but some was straight up miracles.
Yep.
I'm touching a miracle right now. They should not be alive. And they're grateful for it. It's like, wow.
I got to hang out with my nephew yesterday. So it's my wife's sister's son. And he, in January, was at a party. Night was 19, night's 20 now. Was at a party and somebody was playing around with a gun and literally shot him through the head. So the bullet went through his head. Like he still has fragments inside and everything, but he's walking, he's alive. He's, like when we got that call that early morning of Matthew's been shot in the head, there's so many things that go through your head. Like, is he going to live? Is he going to walk? Is he going to have a memory? Is he going to be able to function? And to see this young man, like we're out golfing, he's super excited, super happy, like just very talkative, was excited to be out of the house and hanging out with us. And he talked about having that level of gratitude. And he talked about going through depression because there was like you can't do any of this stuff. You're stuck at home. You can't work. You have no purpose. And he's like, I sat and got depressed thinking about all the things I didn't have. But he's like, now I'm good because it's that perspective of thinking like, I'm working my way back to getting that stuff. It doesn't have to happen right now. I just got to I'm alive. I'm walking. I'm talking. I can remember. And like to think about those things because not everybody's that lucky.
And that's the God moment, right?
Yep.
Like, I hate to say, but God determines where, I woke up this morning. Thank you, God. Right?
Yep.
That's not my choice.
If you can find those little pieces of gratitude, it's impossible to look at how horrible the world is or how horrible your situation is. Start looking for those. I woke up today. I can use my body today. I can go to the bathroom and put my underwear on.
And I'm pretty intentional about this, but I do have some sort of prayer before I eat anytime. And I know that used to be an old thing and we don't do that anymore, but it's thank you. Thank you for this time. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Thank you for the breath in my lungs, the love in my heart, the love that surrounds me, for having the ability or the money to be able to afford this meal before me. It doesn't have to be spiritual. It doesn't have to be religious.
Thank you for the mind to be able to make choices and change and grow.
Yeah.
How powerful is that? And that's what the theme of our conversation is we get to make choices and decisions. We get to change and grow. We get to go do this and we get to say, you know what? I don't want to do that anymore. And we get to change our minds. What other animal in the world gets to do that? Everybody else, all the other animals in society, like they react by nature. They've got to hunt and their days look the same. We get to choose that tomorrow is going to be different.
Yep. I'm still a squirrel today. Damn.
Still a squirrel. Damn it. I still got to go get the nut and climb the tree.
I really want to be a cat, but I'm a squirrel. Gosh. But you're right, though. I mean, and the thing is I've done my work around this of my own shame, and this has been years past now of shaming me for being too far or not good enough. Why am I not married? Why don't I have kids? Why don't I have a step? All of this, right? Or I love my dad, but when I was younger, he used to get frustrated because I kept changing my mind. Why can't you just make up your mind? And so that used to be a shame piece, and I've worked through it now because there's shame in that. Like, just make up your mind. It's just like it worked and worked until it didn't, right? And he's changed his mind on that now because he's sort of seen me through the process of it. But I think that's a huge piece for a lot of people to listen to is all the shoulds and ought tos in the world that keep people paralyzed, right? I mean, I've lost track of how many university staff that I've heard, oh, I just have 5 more years until I get retirement, so I'm just going to stick it out in this job that I hate. So it's like, why? Because then I'll be safe. So great. Yeah. So now you're going to be miserable, probably ill health and whatever, but it's just 5 years. And then after that, I can do it. It's like, well, okay, if that's how you're choosing to look at this.
How much time do you have left on the earth? You don't know.
You don't know. And so
5 years.
Well, and this is whenever I see, like, a dear friend had a police officer die recently, or anytime I've had someone in my life die, it's like, stop. Stop. And that was kind of what cleared me up about this job. It's just like, that person, okay, am I actually happy? No. Am I suffering through this? Yes. Do I really want to do this? No. How am I going to die tomorrow and die unhappy? Right. And I've mentioned this in other podcasts. I don't know if I mentioned this with you, but a lot of times people think that they can't do whatever they want, and that's not true. What they have is an obligation. Like I mentioned, I can just walk out of this interview right now. It'd be weird, but I have my choice to do it. Right.
Me and Johnny would be like,
I'm done. I'm just done, man. But we can though, right? And and the thing is it comes back to when I was saying learning to say no. Learning to say no is our choice.
Yeah.
And it may be uncomfortable. It may feel ungood, but let's go through that emotion, walk through that wall of uncomfortable, and there's a gift on the other side of it.
When you talk to you like being in front of camera and stuff like that, but you think about the biggest fear before death is getting up and speaking in front of public. People would rather die than speak in public, but if you die, does it really matter that you went and spoke in public? That's the way I always look at it. Like,
you're right.
It could be worse.
It could absolutely be worse, right? And who knows? Death actually may be pretty nice. We don't know.
We don't know. That's true. That's true.
We don't know.
It's the fear of the unknown.
Depending on what your belief is, right? So what's interesting is yes, and so this is another plug. So by the way, I am looking for gigs to be in front of camera. I'm going to be Bob Vila, or someone. I want to be a talk show host. I want to be something. And if you want to see my CV, just go to my YouTube channel, Traveling Bodhi. You'll get to see all of it. It's fantastic. Regardless, I would love to do that. I'm one of these, like I was saying before we hit record, I'm one of the rare photographers that loves being in front of the camera. I have a Leo rising, for those who knows what that is, and so I love the camera. And not all the time. I mean, like when I was younger, I definitely was like the shy, quiet. I mean, literally in high school, I was given the title in one class as the shy, quiet kid in the corner that sleeps the whole time. Really. Where was I going with this? There was something, you were leading up with this. I was going to share something. What were you saying before I went into the camera thing? Dying before. Yeah. So I won't name the organization, but there's organizations that do clothing optional personal growth retreats in the world. There's a lot of them. And I and a few other people did it just to have the experience. And I did multiple workshops. So it was multiple weekends. But basically, everyone, co-gender, it's not about sex. It's not about orgies and it's like about personal growth and being vulnerable and sharing personal stuff. And stripping away the layers. That's really what it's about. If we take off all of this accoutrement, the bling, the whatever, we're identityless. We're just a human. And there's beauty in that because we identify, you have nice jewelry, so you must be rich. You drive a jet, whatever. You have nice clothes, so you might. No. When you pull all that away, you're naked and vulnerable, and so you can just be truthful. I and a few other people, for the first time ever, got up in front of a mic, and I mean just like a mic pole, not even a podium, with a mic and go, I needed to have the experience of speaking naked in front of a group of people. So I've literally done that a few times. And I'm sorry, Mom, it's true, but you don't need to hear the story. It wasn't weird. But regardless, I've done that. I've done the most scary thing for most people in the world. Speaking naked in front of a group. And the fact is they're naked. Normally like, imagine the audience is naked. But what if you're naked and they're naked? It's even more weird. But regardless, it gave me that power to be like, Here I am.
Yeah.
There you are. We're all on the same platform. And I'm going to be even more raw now and open my heart and share some deeper stuff.
If you could do that, what else could you do?
Anything, right? And so it just gave me the confidence. And of course, when I first started teaching in public speaking, do you remember what Slam was? Were you around for that?
No.
So in Ann Arbor, 10 or so years ago, there was this organization called Slam. They took a poetry slam idea and the Moth main stage from NPR, right? Storytelling.
Okay, yeah.
And they merged it. And what they did was like a once a month, Friday evening, if you were an entrepreneur, you would get up or whatever, you would get up on stage and tell a story out of whatever theme it was. And they would have like people in the audience would choose to be the judges and they'd rate you. And whoever had the highest score at the end of the night won some prize. I had just opened my bodywork practice. So this was in 2012. And I went up there not knowing what I was going to say, but I forced myself. And so people like we've talked, you were mentioning with one of your guests, like I'm afraid to be in front of a camera. I'm afraid to be on stage.
Yeah.
And people see me and they go, well, you're a natural. I'm like, I've been well into my time of practicing this.
Yep.
So this is
because you used to be that kid that sat in the back of the class sleeping and not saying anything.
Right. And so for me, I, like you said, doing the hard work, I forced myself to get on stage with a microphone. And then I went to this and then, and I'll never forget one time I was doing a poetry slam in San Francisco and I had this beautiful poem I was about to read and I got up there and then what I'm going to do is this and then and something said, stop. And then what was interesting is I was afraid that they were just going to start throwing tomatoes as soon as I was afraid they're going to start throwing tomatoes as soon as I stopped. But what I realized is I had their full attention and I could have stood silent for 5 minutes and they wouldn't have said a thing. But I didn't realize that until I stopped, took the deep breath, looked at them and I had all their attention. And then I continued reading and then I felt them engage. Mm-hmm. But before I was just nervous to be up there and I was just embarrassed, right? So sometimes, I don't know about you, when you do engagements, do you just stand up in front of the audience for a minute and just breathe and just look at them and ground yourself before speaking?
Yep. Yeah, no, breath is so important. You said you took that breath and I said it out loud is take that breath because it gives you a wave of calmness. You also get centered within the moment as opposed to just getting up there and going. Have you ever stood up in front of a crowd and spoke and you're speaking for like 5 minutes before you realize who's in front of me? Like you can't even see.
Am I even breathing? Yeah. That's the other thing. Oftentimes when I get done teaching, I go, and breathe everyone. And I watch the whole audience just breathe because they're holding their breath. I'm holding their breath and I'm talking really fast and I don't know what I'm going to say and I don't want to embarrass myself and I don't want to do that. So it's like,
I was that nervous kid in school, in high school, that I didn't speak to anybody either. And then I was in speech class my junior year. And it was just like, I was afraid what people would think or whatever. I'd hold my true self back. And I had this speech class and I'll never forget it, even though I don't remember the details of it because I got up and I started giving this impromptu speech that we were assigned. It was like you can impromptu topic right beforehand. I went up, it was the first speech we gave and I started talking and all of a sudden I didn't know who was in front of me. The next thing I know, I literally kicked over the podium and the whole crowd erupted in laughter and I just kept going. And it was like a comedy stand-up hour after that. And I just kept everybody entertained. I'm like, I found my calling.
There it is.
I need to be speaking in front of people. So it was never a problem again. In fact, I came out of my shell so much that I survived the rest of high school and I became who I am today. Where I love speaking in front of people. Look at me. I'm like completely automated. When I say that I was like, I would not talk to people because I was afraid of my shadow, people are like, get out of here. Like, no way.
Yeah.
That it must be nice to be like you. You could just go talk to anybody. No, that was not always me.
You haven't seen all the awkward film.
You haven't seen the pictures of me hiding behind my mom's leg when somebody from my school would come up and say hi to me. Through elementary school, that was a reality.
Yeah. Well, I'll say. So you're reminding me. I haven't thought about this similar thing. I think it was like 4th grade. You were trying to get us to do public speaking, right? And we all got a random card with a subject we had to talk for 5 minutes on. What did my subject was the weekend. I got up there. I'm like, I like to play video games with my friends and video games, and I couldn't come up with anything to speak about for the weekend. That's like that's like a slam dunk. That's like an easy piece of pie, and I couldn't even speak. And so I did the opposite experience of you. I was mortified, and it threw me further back.
Yeah. I think if you would have hit me in fourth grade, I would have floundered as well, and I probably would have had the same scarring moment. If I just so happened to be right place, right time, right, I was ready to like have that metamorphosis and find my confidence. But it was,
But I will say, even and I'll just my bestie Jeremiah. In early 2020, I was starting to do so. If you actually go to my socials on Illuminate, which is my coaching and my bodywork page, I was still getting, this is even 2 years ago. Hi, my name is Brian, and today I'm going to talk to you about personal growth and self-empowerment. What we're going to do is, and my buddy's like, stop. And so there's a lot of footage that's in there. He's like,
I was going to ask you, yeah.
And so if you go there, you'll see a lot of not good things. And on the surface, it may be like, oh, well, he's giving good content. But and I wasn't reading a script, but I was like, hi, I think today I'm going to talk to you about levels and what that means and projections and mirrors as opposed, and people, when they're paying attention, like, whoa, and it's weird going back, but I had someone tell me, leave that there because people want to see your progression.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Especially in film.
Yep. Oh, and I had went to your website when we first met, watching your videos, and then I've watched your videos as they've progressed, and I've seen your progression, and that's just so awesome. It's so awesome.
Well, it's like, it's, people like want to be your cheerleader, and they want to, because I think for me it's, oh, I know them really well because I knew them when.
Yeah.
And now they're all this and stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a part of me that wants to pull something down that old film, but it's just like,
keep it.
Just keep it.
I love it. I love reposting my stuff all the time. Like, because again, people say, oh, you're just a natural. Oh, it must, like it's not, it's easy for you. It was not easy for me. It wasn't easy for you in the beginning. It took practice. Anything that's worth doing, you have to practice that. Even when it came to body work, I'm sure that there's a lot that you had to learn, even though it was your calling, right?
Do you know what we have to learn? To not go over an hour on our thing. I mean, our last one was an hour and a half, and I don't know what you had with Q, and I'm sure.
I've been watching, so we're good. But.
But anyway, and Johnny's like, you guys are going over. So I don't know. So do you want to?
Yeah. So, okay. So
I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that guy again. The Joe Rogan podcast that goes for 6 hours.
No, so we covered an amazing array of topics, but it all comes down to a few different things, right? It's like communication, like grounding to yourself, like finding your triggers. What are some other things you felt like you got from that experience with Laurel?
Don't worry, the camera didn't pause. You're still recording. Long pause to think. The answer is doing things that I didn't think that I could do. Because what I learned was Laurel pointed it out to me, and then I conferred it with my best friend of 20 years, and I asked my mom when I returned about a month ago. Laurel would invite me or ask me, sometimes tell me to do something that I didn't want to do. So I don't want to do that. I'm not good at it. I don't know how to, and I would react. Right. And then I'd pull back. I would just get reactionary. And then I'd pull back. And then I would think about it and do the inner work. And then I'd get frustrated with myself. Like, oh, fine, let's just go do this. And then I would do it. And then I would actually enjoy doing it. And I'd actually be pretty good at it. And the actual result would be pretty wonderful in the end. But Laurel upset her a lot through the whole process until finally, she's like, it was like 6 months in. She's like, do you realize that you do this? I'm like, no. She goes, it really angers me when you do that because I know you're going to do it. And so we're able to laugh about it at the end. And to the point where I love my mom. I asked my mom when I got home and I said, do I do this? And she just like, she didn't say anything. I'm like, okay, I'll just take that as an answer. Right. And so, yeah. So sometimes we're met with obstacle and frustration. So that was the biggest takeaway for me, I think, from that is when I am asked to do something that I don't want to do, or I think it's challenging to me, my ego reacts and it's like, no, I don't want to look like a fool and whatever. And then I think about it. And then my analytical mind goes, well, how can I get this done? And how can I do it in a good way? And then I pray. And all of a sudden I have the whole blueprint right in front of me. It's like, oh, come on. Right.
Yeah.
Can you relate to that at all?
Oh, absolutely. Just being here right now, being where I'm at in my business. It was like, I said this the other day it was Saturday. I saw a friend downtown when we were talking, and he was asking how things were going. And it's like, for so long, it's like work and everything. Things came easy, but then there's just stuff that's like, it just seems like you're fighting upstream. it's like you're fighting your purpose. You're fighting doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing. And it seems like life can be so hard. And you come across all these challenges. And I'm not saying challenges don't happen now. I'm not saying that there aren't bad times, but things are just happening. I used to hear like the speakers like Tony Robbins be like, when you have a purpose or a passion that your why is so deep, then you don't push, you get pulled. Like he's like, I'm not motivated. The life just pulls me. And I'm like, you're full of shit, Tony Robbins. Like, what are you talking about? Like everything's a struggle.
Well, there's truth. Like I just said, like I got pulled from this job to that job, but at the same time, birth, we need to go through that chrysalis.
Yeah.
Right. And if we don't have that, there's a lot, we need the pinch point. We need the ring of fire. And so for the people who if it's challenging, I'm not going to do it because I don't want to be challenged. And it's like, I don't want the participation work. You need to do the hard work.
Yeah.
You did the hard work to get here. Wife's like, are you making any money, Jason? You're like, well, maybe eventually, but you kept doing it.
I kept doing it. And it was like, I don't know. It's like there's a push because it's like you're on the right path. You've got to experience that struggle. But once you break the atmosphere, there is a pull.
There is.
And so I was like, oh my God, Tony Robbins was right. Things just seem to be kind of pulling me. And then I'm like, all of a sudden I'm here at Speakeasy and doing the podcast here, and things are going to another level there. And like clients are just, instead of having to sell, like people are just reaching out to me saying, hey, I want you to work with my client. Let's connect and have a meeting. And I'm like, wow, like I'm not pushing anymore. I'm just letting life pull me. And it takes a lot of work. You got to get through that push. But once it happens, like, and you start living your purpose, it's like,
you can inhale that time, not exhale.
Yes. And I think that's an excellent way to wrap up our conversation, is just that you're going to experience hard stuff. You're going to experience that like hardships and whatnot. But like, and it's okay if you like change your mind, right? If it's okay to change your mind, it's okay to reset.
It's okay. And I think that's the biggest lesson probably that I'm sitting with right now is I was holding some shame around not keeping the construction job because of all the litany of story. I'm going to upset my parents and blah, 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 blah. Right. But at the end of the day, I think we need to do what's right for us. As we mentioned, life is precious. Life is short. Yes, there are challenges, and yes, we need to meet them. At the same time, choose your battles.
Yes.
Right? So,
man.
All right, Jason.
Brian, I think this is going to be another top episode. So.
I hope so. But I mean, you've been having some awesome guests. So, I mean, I don't want to say my ego loves being on top, but at the same time, other people have to share it with me.
Did you listen? We were talking, but did you listen to the episode "Living Your Best Life"? It was the first episode here with Meg Scaling and Shirley Ross.
I have not yet.
Okay. Listen to that episode. I need you to connect you with them because I think that there might be a good fit there. So
cool. I love it. And that's what I love about this networking, connecting, and just getting to meet people. So, oh man, one thing I was going to say at the end. I just failed. I was going to think of something really clever to say, and it just.
You've had so many clever things and voices. Like I don't know how you do it, but it's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure being on the show. Thank you for having me more second time.
Second time.
Maybe a third time in a year and a half. I don't know.
We'll have a new trajectory.
But that's what, if y'all want to have me on your podcast for entertainment or information, then give me a call. You can get the information at the bottom of the list or from this man, Raw Her. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, go out there and kill it this week.